There's something you should know about losing everything. It happens in an instant. One moment, your world is intact. The next, it's gone. I've seen it happen to good people, to strong people. Maybe it's happened to you. But here's what they don't tell you about rock bottom. It's not just a place of despair. It's also a foundation. The only direction from absolute zero is up. When you lose everything, your purpose, your loved ones, your faith in yourself, you're faced with the most important choice you'll ever make. Will you stay down, or will you rise? I once knew a man who lost his father as a child, lost his best friend as a teenager, lost his mentor shortly after, lost his students one by one, lost his purpose, his village, his faith in the systems he'd sworn to protect. By all accounts, he had every right to give up, to walk away, to let bitterness consume what little remained of his heart. But he didn't. Instead, he woke up each morning. He put one foot in front of the other. He showed up, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt, because he understood something essential. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Think about that for a moment. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Pain will find you. It finds us all. Loss, disappointment, failure. These are the universal experiences that connect us as human beings. No one escapes this life without scars. But suffering? Suffering is what happens when we resist this reality, when we fight against what is, instead of working with what remains. The man I knew understood this distinction. He felt the pain fully. He didn't run from it, or numb it, or pretend it wasn't there. But he refused to let it define him, refused to let it dictate his future. And that's the first lesson in rising from the ashes. Don't deny your pain. Don't hide from it. Look it straight in the eye and say, yes, you're here, but you don't get to decide who I become. There was a day, just one of many dark days, when this man stood before a memorial stone. Names carved in cold granite, friends, family, comrades, people he couldn't save. A lesser person might have drowned in guilt, might have been paralyzed by the weight of so much loss. But do you know what he did instead? He made a vow, not a dramatic promise, not some grand declaration, just a quiet commitment to honor their memory by living fully, by protecting what they valued, by carrying forward their will. And that's the second lesson. When you lose someone or something precious, you can either focus on what's gone, or you can focus on what that loss asks of you now. Are you being called to carry on a legacy? To finish important work? To become the person they always believed you could be? Loss isn't just an ending. Sometimes it's also a beginning, if you're brave enough to see it that way. Now, I want to be clear about something. This isn't about positive thinking or pretending everything is fine when it isn't. This isn't about rushing through grief or denying reality. This is about something much deeper, the human capacity for resilience. Resilience isn't bouncing back like nothing happened. It's being transformed by what happened and moving forward anyway, changed but undefeated. The man I knew was never the same after his losses. How could he be? But in time, his wounds became wisdom. His grief became gratitude for what he'd had. His failures became his greatest teachers, and this is possible for you too. Whatever you've lost, a job, a relationship, your health, your dreams, it doesn't have to be the end of your story. It can be the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter defined not by what was taken from you, but by what you choose to do next. Now, let's talk about how. Because inspiration without action is just entertainment. How do you keep fighting when everything in you wants to surrender? The man I knew would tell you it starts with small steps, tiny victories, getting out of bed when depression tells you to stay down, eating when you have no appetite, reaching out when isolation feels safer. He'd tell you to find one thing, just one small thing you can control today. Maybe it's making your bed. Maybe it's walking around the block. Maybe it's sending that text or making that call you've been avoiding. Start there. Build momentum with these small wins. They may seem insignificant, but they're not. They're proof that you still have power, that you can still affect your world, even when so much feels out of control. He'd also tell you something that might be hard to hear. At some point, you have to stop waiting for rescue. Stop waiting for the perfect opportunity. Stop waiting for someone to notice your pain and fix it for you. Stop waiting for motivation or inspiration or the right feeling. Sometimes, you have to be your own hero, not because others don't care, not because you don't deserve help, but because ultimately, the power to rebuild your life exists within you, and no one can access that power on your behalf. The third lesson from the man who lost everything is perhaps the most important. Find meaning in your suffering. When something meaningful is taken from you, the void it leaves can consume you, unless you fill it with new meaning. Ask yourself, what has this loss taught me? How has it changed my priorities? What do I value now that I didn't fully appreciate before? Sometimes, our greatest losses clarify our deepest values. They strip away the non-essential and force us to confront what truly matters. The man I knew found meaning in protecting others, in teaching the next generation, in honoring the sacrifices of those who came before. What will your meaning be? Perhaps it's creating art from your pain. Perhaps it's advocating for others who are suffering as you have. Perhaps it's simply loving more deeply, because you now understand how precious and precarious life truly is. There's a concept from an ancient tradition, kintsugi, the art of repairing broken pottery with gold. The cracks aren't hidden, they're highlighted, celebrated, made beautiful. The broken places don't diminish the vessel. They become its most distinctive feature, its story, its character. You too can be mended with gold. Your brokenness isn't something to hide or deny. It's part of your story now, and it can become your strength if you let it. You may have lost everything that once defined you, but as long as you keep fighting, you'll never lose the one thing that matters most, your unbreakable spirit. And in the end, that's the only thing that no one can take from you unless you surrender it willingly. So keep fighting, not just for what you've lost, but for what you've yet to find. Keep showing up. Keep taking one more step. Keep breathing when it hurts. The world needs your comeback story, needs your resilience, needs the wisdom that only comes from being broken and choosing to become whole again. The rest of your story is still waiting to be written, and I believe with every fiber of my being that it can be more beautiful, more meaningful, and more impactful because of what you've endured. Not despite your losses, but because of them. So remember the man who lost everything, but kept fighting. And remember that you can be that man too. That's the legacy worth leaving. That's the battle worth fighting. That's the victory that matters most.